What is up, podheads? Back with another episode of the Podioslave podcast. My name is Tony. I am joined by Anthony. And real quick hitter here just to kind of give you the intro. We just had a phenomenal conversation with Todd Mackey. Again, he wanted to turn the microphones, the spotlight in on you and I for 4 years, didn't he?
Yeah, no, and when we had Todd on back in episode, what was it, 180 something? It was in the
187,
fall.
Yep.
Yeah, we wrapped up with him and we started talking about the podcast coming up in 4 years, and he said, "Hey, why don't I come back for a 4-year special and I interview you guys?" And we're like, "Really? Okay, sweet."
Right? Yeah.
It's like when we started this, I didn't even think that stuff like that was possible or people would be even interested in it. So we hit it off with him back then, and we coordinated with him. And I know we did do a little like 4-year retro back in, I think it was the beginning of the Offspring episode.
Yep.
But we're giving it the full treatment, right? Yeah,
you Nate and I did a little like, oh, it's been 4 years, this is kind of crazy, but Todd asked us to do that back in September, October of last year, and it happened. It was amazing. He had some awesome questions. It forced us to kind of think a little bit and put some stuff out there, and he's such a genuine dude, and with honor rules, and yeah, go follow them, please.
Follow them. Todd, if you're listening, which I hope you do, check out the episode and you can, critique your interview skills, which you were great. We love the questions. And if you're listening, you're going to find out pretty soon here. So thank you, Todd. And hey, we don't smell the roses. We don't stop and smell the roses a lot. We typically just keep churning. Next interview, next post, next conversation, whatever. We're going to pause. We're going to appreciate everyone that's listened, appreciate every person we've interviewed, any friends that have recommended bands, any PR firms that have put us in touch with anyone, management, etc. If you've played even the smallest role in our story, man, I don't know. We didn't have a lot of expectations about this, and we're still doing it now, and we still love it. It still fills the bucket. It still scratches that itch. However you want to position it, we're still in, and I don't think that's stopping, my friend.
No, we're going to keep doing it, and we really appreciate anybody that has taken their time, even if it's just this episode. This is your first one. Thank you. Yeah, so let's get into it. Todd interviewing us on 4 years, and there's plenty of music talking here. Don't you worry.
Yeah, I mean, as I remember it, if I can just get us started, you both immediately strike me as very authentic, very warm people, and I'm kind of moved by how you seem to enjoy each other. There's like friendships that thrive on a bit of like, elbows to the ribs, and then there's like friendships that have like, no matter the humor between, there's sort of this kind of respect and regard that people clearly have for one another, and how you talk to each other and in all of the guests you've had on in the episodes I've listened to, how you come through just being a guest on your show. I was immediately moved by your relationship. So, it was one of these things that to me was interesting to kind of put a few questions in front of you and then to imagine like, wait a minute, all these people that are listening to you guys over time, like, have they gotten this story? Like, do they get this side of you? So that was kind of where I was coming from. I was hoping that we could turn the mics on you even more. I don't know if that's...
Man, I'm gonna tear up. Like,
I know,
man,
right?
that was the real deal. I'm like, man, we might just stop the episode.
Like, you got a good thing going, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's amazing. That is amazing to hear, and I'm so happy that we had the conversation that we did. What was it, back in September? And to be able to. You feel that way about us as friends? Oh, man, that's just all that was really nice. So thank you. I appreciate that.
That's cool. No, man. I mean, especially as the years go on, like I feel like cultivating deeply meaningful things. It's you have to go narrow to go deep, and doing something like you're doing, committing to each other and to building something cool with Podioslave. I just think it's awesome. So celebrating is something, at least down here. I know I'm the stone's throw, but like we don't really culturally do that very well. So I don't remember exactly where the idea first came out of, like for the anniversary show, but I feel like the opportunity to ask you guys some questions and to let your listeners kind of just chew on where you've come from and what you're up to and what you want to get into from here, I think is a good way to celebrate a lot of hard work that you guys have put into this thing. So.
Yeah, it was definitely your idea. I remember it was we hung on the phone, hung on the Zoom call after, and I think something came up about duration or number of episodes, and I think it was like you brought up the idea, and I was like, well, that's cool. And it's like one of those things when we started this, having Todd from With Honor interview us for a 4-year anniversary, like I'd want to know the steps that had to happen for that to happen. It's like like when movies start where like the guys are in prison and he's like, I'll tell you how this all started, but you wonder how I got here. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah.
It's like,
well, I'll take responsibility for that then. That's on me.
Nice.
That's on me.
I like it. But you're right. A million things had to happen for us to get to even the point where we were talking to you in that moment, and then to get to here too. So like, I mean, you had putting a record out after 18 years, right?
Something like that.
Yeah, you know, like all that had to happen first too, and then us obviously doing this for at that point 180 episodes or whatever, and then you know to today where we're at 210, 212, whatever it is.
Number 210. Yeah. Well, it's a hell of a lift, guys, and I'll say it again. I'm sure I'll reiterate across the conversation, but congratulations. I do think you know, things, especially as it relates to media, can all too often be like flashes in the pan, and it's really cool, like, you know, the way you're digging in and what you're up to. So yeah, I prepared a bit of a gauntlet here for us, and I would love to dive in. Are we ready for that?
I'm ready. And actually, before we do it, I'll say this. This could be the first episode where I have not prepared a lick.
Nice.
And it was
nice.
great. It was great not to have any, you know, you just put the kids to bed and like, all right, I'll jump on and chat with a few buddies. And
that's
you know,
awesome.
there's no prep, there's no listening to music, there's nothing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And to that point, I did not send you these questions ahead. So, you know,
That's
there's going to be,
true,
there's a couple, I would define a couple of these as doozies, and I'm excited to see where you guys take them, because I think it'll be insightful. I also think, like, you know, they're doozies. So, you know, sometimes in doing something like this, you know, the amount of work, you guys are both, you have lives, you have careers, you have families. Like, I mean, there's a lot going on. And I think it'll be interesting to see, like, as you slow down and kind of not only look back, but think on, you know, where you are in this process. It'll be interesting to see what you come up with for these. But to kick it off, my biggest curiosity here, and I almost feel like you could probably, in the context of an interview, you could probably answer this question at the beginning. And if we do this thing right, you might answer it again at the end, and it might even be more clear to you. But I want to hear from both of you, and your choice who starts. But if you had to distill your vision today, right, 4 years into Podioslave, if you had to distill your vision to 5 words or less for this podcast, why you do it, what you're trying to achieve, what it means to you and each other, what would those 5 or less words be? Take your time.
Man, 5 or less. Like, that's geez, there's no wiggle room there.
I got 5. I'm ready.
You go.
I think. I mean, I could do it, and we've done it for a bunch of episodes where I ramble, but celebrate the music we love. Whoa. That's it.
That's really good. I
got 5. Yeah.
All right, Anthony, hit it.
The music, what and why. The what and the why.
Okay. Man, you guys crushed that. That's to get lost on this one.
Tony, what did you say again?
Celebrate the music we love.
Yeah. Oh, man. If you actually, Todd, to bring it back to the words you said, distill it down, that nails it pretty good.
Yeah, man. Well, it helps to have that, right? Like, when you have that short, memorable, I mean, I think to anybody who's been following along, celebrate the music we love, the music, what and why. I mean, I think that's very reflective of what you've done. But I also think, like, if ever the path gets blurry, man, those are good words to go back to, right?
Oh, totally.
Always good to kind of chart and set the course. But I mean, you know, I think it sets me up for my next question to you guys. And it really, I would love to go back as far as we possibly can, I will share with you my first record that I bought, which is somewhat hilarious. But I'd love to hear from both of you. You know, what was your first album? What was the context? How old were you? Like, you know, where did you go to buy it? And to just give you some context, you know, for me, the first album I went out and bought with my money was a cassette tape of Boys to Men, Cooley High Harmony that I bought at Sam Goody at the Buckland Hills Mall in Manchester, Connecticut. And it was driven primarily by It's So Hard to Say Goodbye to Yesterday, right? This like super tug on your heartstrings single that was out. So I don't know if you guys remember that, but this is how far back I want to go. I was in 4th grade.
I remember that my mom having both that record and the second one that came out after, and I'm drawing a blank on the name, but it had like Water Runs Dry and
was it Forever or is it?
Yeah, with the 2 on the cover.
With the 2, yeah.
That was the like when they were huge at this point. Like they had a minute. Can I go first, Anthony? I'm ready to.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna jump at the bit here. We've talked about this record a ton. I will tell you the context as to how I got it. I think 93, 94, right? Counting Crows, August, and Everything After. My dad, I remember riding in the car with my dad. My parents had just split, and listening to Mr. Jones, listening to Round Here, listening to Omaha, and kind of falling in love with, oh, this is something you can do. Like, we have music on in the car, and I can buy the CD, and like I can own it myself and put it on whenever I want to, you know, as a 9-year-old. And I'm an insulin-dependent diabetic, have been since I was 9. The Halloween of my 10th, I was 10 years old, so it was not quite a year as a diabetic. I went trick-or-treating, but I couldn't really eat all the candy. So I sold all the candy to my mom for $15 and bought Counting Crows, August, and Everything After at Leechmere, which was at the main mall.
Dude, Leechmere. I haven't heard that in a while.
Yeah.
So you say $15. So Todd, where Tony lived in Maine, there was a plaza like right across the street, and there was a CD store called CD Authority. Okay. And when Tony said $15, in my head I was like, that wouldn't even get it done. You couldn't even buy a CD for that back in the mid-90s. Sure. It was one of those places where the CDs were like, what, $17, $16.99?
CD Authority was, some of them were $20. You're like, what are we doing here?
This is back when they were on those big, like, rack type jammies that they had a special key to take it out of before you walked out with it. Okay. Yeah, back deep in the days of what was it? What was it? Columbia House? What were the like, you know,
BMG Columbia House?
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
There you go.
Are you segueing into my answer?
Potentially. I mean, this could be a nice setup. What do you have going? I also just want to take a pause and say, I mean, that is a critical record, that Counting Crows record, in my opinion. I mean, unbelievable songwriting.
So
and
good.
I would be so much more proud to share my first album purchase with my own cash if that were the case for me.
Well, and I just bought tickets to see them this summer in Portland, Maine. And I bought my dad and my stepmom tickets as well. And he was super stoked when I called him yesterday to tell him.
Where is that show?
Thompson's Point, which is the outside venue there. Yeah.
Yeah, right. No, Bissell Brothers.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
On the water there. That's awesome. I mean, have such a good time. All right, Anthony, you're up. Take it away.
So I kind of have two answers, because there was my literal first, which was like a wave of CDs. It was through BMG Columbia House. I don't remember which one.
Let me guess. Stone Temple Pilots, Purple.
No.
Was this album in the mix? No. Okay.
It wasn't. I think that was in maybe later, and I know that came out before. I guess to date it, I was born in 85. That's all I'm going to give you, listeners. You're not getting my birthday, whatever. My zodiac sign.
We have tried that on this podcast. I've had to cut our birthdays so many times.
But I was born in 85, so this dates back to like 93, 94. So I was 8 or 9, and there was a wave of CDs, because you'd get, buy one, get 10 free, or whatever it was.
Yep.
Blues Traveler Hook was in there. Dave Matthews, Under the Table Dreaming, and I think Crash was in that mix. Mariah Carey, the one before, Daydream. Music Box, maybe.
Deep cut.
Yeah, right. So it was like kind of alt rock pop stuff. So that was like literal first. Do you want to hear like the first my record, like my record?
Yeah, I do feel like we need that next level of ownership here. I mean, all of these are good references, but I do want to hear the connection.
So my first record was when I was in 5th grade. It was in 96. Tony knows where this is going. It was probably spring of 96. And there was a kid in my class who was rough around the edge. His name was Rob. I'm not going to give his last name. He was the kind of kid that would, like, you know, like the banister as you're going down the stairs. He would hook his arm down the banister and he'd slide down and like or he'd like slide down on his ass down the banister, like one of these wild card dudes. And like he ended up breaking his arm on the banister at one point. But like I'm giving you some clientele here. He took a tape from his sister, actually 2 tapes. One was Marilyn Manson's Portrait of an American Family, and the second was Rage's Evil Empire. And it was the Rage one that I was like, this is fucking rad. I mean, I was 9, 10. I'm like, I shouldn't be listening to this. And then there was a record store in our main mall called Record Town, and I bought the tape shortly after. Yeah. And I don't know the conversation that was had with my parents, but like I walked out of there, parental advisory sticker and all, at like 10 with it. And that was what set it off.
Yeah. Okay.
It wasn't Madball set it off, but that's what set it off.
Yeah, no, that was also, I mean, I remember buying that. I was a little older than you. I still am. I mean, that's how that thing works. But but I remember getting that record in 8th grade, and I mean, just the artwork, like the anticipation of it coming out. It was one of the first albums I feel like had a certain level of anticipation, and then seeing that like bright yellow cover with the, you know, animated character on the cover, I was blown away. Were these like, so Tony, you're talking about putting this record on in the car, hanging with your dad, connecting over music. Was music something, Anthony, in your home life? Was it something that your family was doing? Like, was music something shared in like your family setting, or no?
Yeah. Oh, big time. Yeah. My dad was like Def Leppard, The Outfield, Journey, Queen, Bee Gees. It was kind of like a thing. It wasn't like the thing. It was one of really 2. It was sports and music. And music. But it was a big, like, he had a huge vinyl collection. Massive. Probably 1,000 records, and he probably has doubled that now.
Okay. So, and there was a turntable, so you were like accustomed to putting records on, listening to.
Can I tell you a story there?
Yeah, please.
Early memory. This was probably mid-90s. My dad was listening to, I think it was a Queen record, and he had a turntable cassette combo, and then he added a CD thing below it. So like I think it was like a set of Pioneer, whatever, five changer, remember those things? Well, anyway, he had it elevated, so I would have to like step up on a chair and like play with it. Well, I remember he was playing Queen, I think it was Greatest Hits or whatever, and I looked up and lifted the thing up and looked in, and I go, Dad, how do you rewind this? So that was my first exposure to vinyl, which was my guess. Actually, that was probably early 90s.
Yeah.
So it was always around. That's the punchline. It was always
Slick
around.
just start cutting?
Actually, he still remembers the story. He's brought it up.
Yeah, that's fine. Is that what you call your dad? Your dad's called Slick?
Slick Rick. I call him Slick Rick. And he might be listening, so shout out
Mr.
to
Slick.
Rick.
Awesome. Yeah. Sick.
But yeah, tons of vinyl.
I love hearing that because, like, yeah, you know, vinyl, like, I think my parents had a record player broken down in the attic where, you know, when I found it, just like stumbling through stuff, it was sort of, what is this? You know, and I was listening to music. I mean, music was something that I think was on, but it wasn't like, you know, there was never a, hey, you know, Todd, slow down, listen to this or check this out. Or, you know, there was never really like an intent with music where, you know, where I perceived like my parents to be people that connected with it. You know what I mean? It was more like, oh yeah, you know, you put the radio station on when you're driving or whatever.
Just casual, like more of a casual thing.
Yeah, but it's really cool. Like one of the things we love to do here is to put records on, you know, of all kinds. And I love that my kids are comfortable like turning the record over or putting it away and grabbing whatever else they want to listen to. And I think about that for like what you are talking about of like having those kind of early experiences where music in that way is not only tangible, but like, part of a core memory, which is cool.
My dad, now I'm thinking about it, he had a room of records like when I was really young. And there's a photo of me kind of as a baby crawling up on his like box of 45s, like 7 inches. And I recreated that photo with my son, with my records, like couple of years ago. So that was cool.
Super cool. That's amazing. Very cool. Tony, I was going to ask you the same. Was that like, I mean, it sounds as though you're talking about listening to records in the car with your dad, connecting over similar stuff. Like, was that also kind of the way music was in the house? Like something that was on, something you guys would kind of, hey, go, put a record on, or, have that conversation over in a regular way?
Music was, we would always, at both my mom's and my dad's, they split when I was like 5. So I don't have a ton of memories of them together, but I have a bunch of memories of both. And my mom had a CD player, tape deck sitting right in the middle of the living room that I had free reign over for quite a while. And we would put stuff on, and she didn't always love it, but, she let me do it, which was cool. And my dad had this massive, like, CD player. I think it had a record. I think it had a turntable. I don't know how many records he had, probably not many. But these, like, speakers that were as tall as me when I was 10. And they would, toss on Tom Petty or toss on Counting Crows, and I'd be like, this is our Sister Hazel. I remember Sister Hazel being a thing. And it was always fun. It was like, oh, my dad's blasting a CD in the living room. This is cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. Well, so let's take first album and let's turn it into first show. So like, and I know show versus concert, there's some degree of nuance there, like, around size, but like first concert you remember going to, or like first live music moment, let's call it, and what did it do to you? Where did it lead? What was going through your body?
I would say like the literal first was, do you remember Better Than Ezra, alt rock band from the 90s? Yeah, they played a patio show, which was like an outdoor show with like an elevated stage up on like kind of like the top of a building, basically, in Portland, Maine, brought on by the local radio stations. That was a literal first, but like the first, again, me moment, I think, was 311, Jimmy's Chicken Shack, March 2000. So we're talking 24 years ago. I was 14. Yeah, it was at the State Theater in Portland.
Great venue.
It's the best.
Like, I can't remember like how I got there, but I can't imagine. Well, no, none of us had licenses. So it must have been parents dropping us off. I think it was a group of us, but I remember walking in there. You could smell weed. You could see a mosh pit. And I was shorter then, so it was kind of tough to see, but the venue kind of elevates. And it was one of those, like, I don't think I'm supposed to be there. Like, and I like equate it to like a movie like from the 90s where like kids go to a rave or something. You know what I mean? It's just like, this is different. I don't think I'm supposed to be here. I feel really young. And like, I remember kids I went with, Steve and Bob and a few others, like they moshed and stuff. And I was like, I don't know what that is. Like, get me away from that. And then the cool thing is I had liked 311 for like 4 years before that. So like to actually see a band that I liked, I don't even know if I didn't know if I knew that was even possible before that.
Yeah. Fast forward to 21 and we're talking to Peanut on the podcast too.
Yeah, we had Peanut from 311 on. So like that was a cool full circle crazy moment. But that was the first. And I would call that like in my eyes that was a show. It wasn't a big production concert like State Theater's 1400 cap, like it's pretty intimate. It wasn't a basement show, but it was you
Oh no, I mean I would say a show like is where you're connected. Like there's not a huge distance, right? Yeah. You're not separated by size or like the volume, just that energy of the number of people that are there or the literal distance that you are from like, the musicians. But yeah, that's awesome. I mean, what a cool venue and combination
Have you been there?
Like a first show. Oh yeah. Yeah. I actually just went, there's this songwriter, Joy Alodikin. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but
not at all.
She is awesome. Put out a record last year called Proof of Life. I love it. And I actually went up to the state to see her play there. She ended her tour up there.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
So, yeah. All right, Tony,
First show. So first show, I was a little later. I had tickets to a CYY Holiday Bazaar in 99, which would have been like 14 or 15 years old for me, but I couldn't go. And I can't remember why. I still have this stub somewhere. It was December of 99, I think. But I ended up going to Bare Naked Ladies at the Civic Center, which they used to come to Portland all the time in this time frame. And they were, from 96 to 2005-ish. They were there all the time. And I went with my friend Bert, who lived down the street from my dad's, who we were huge. We just like listen to music. We listened to Our Lady Peace at his dad's house. We'd listen to Bare Naked Ladies. We'd listen to whatever, Yep. And we ended up going to that. And then a week later, I saw Rustic Overtones, which is a main band. And at the time was kind of in their heyday. And that was the night that was at the State Theater. And that was the night where I was like, I loved both shows. Civic Center is just big. You were in a seat, couldn't really move around. The Rustic show at the State, we're moving around, we're talking to people, we're finding friends. That's when I was like, this is fun. Like, I want to go do this like every night. I want to run into friends at a concert, like the music, see my buddies. I'm 17. This is awesome. Let's do this every night if we can. And it was probably like $10.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Does that name mean anything to you, Todd? Rustic Overtones?
Yeah, they used to play.
Nice.
I mean, they would play Hartford quite a bit. They would play so I grew up between Hartford and Springfield, Mass. And so I went to a fair number of shows that you'd kind of consider like Western Mass scene. So like Northampton, Mass, the Iron Horse, or Pearl Street. Those were like the big clubs.
I remember Pearl
I should
Street,
say big, but like, those were the clubs that had a lot of shows. Later there was, the Infinity for a time. I saw some crazy shows there. Anyway, long story short, like Rustic Overtones kind of had this interesting, they were definitely like a rock band, but they played also like a lot of like ska shows in the area. And so, I went to a lot of different punk, ska, and hardcore shows in those days. Like, any time to go see music. And I don't remember like particular bills that I saw them on, but they were intense. Like I can picture seeing them play. And I imagine during those years, because it was right around the same time, it might have been that I would see them between like 98 and 2001, something like that.
Yep.
And they were like, I couldn't only imagine seeing them at like a hometown show. They must have been pretty sick.
Portland's darlings. Yeah.
Yeah. And they were all over the radio, the local rock radio. And they would play the State a couple times a year. And so we see them in November. Anthony and I went together. And I think in May they were breaking up. And I have that whole Anthony. I don't know how you found it, but I have that entire set in pretty good condition on my in an MP3 form. Saved somewhere in here, and I have it in CDs too. And
recorded how? How did
I don't even know. I don't even know where we found it. It's in decent shape. Like it sounds good. It's 3 discs. It's like 30 songs.
It was on some random website hosted it for years, and I think you must have ripped it.
I ripped it, and I still have it. Okay. And I've listened to it fairly recently because I remember I burned it for our buddy Spose because he's in a band with Dave Gutter. He's his guitarist now, who's the front man of Rustic, and they're still a band, which is cool. They did the farewell thing in 2002, but they're still kicking in some form. Hey man,
good for them. That's how to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
No, that's awesome. Okay, so let's stay with this with the timeline here. So you're both talking like around 99, 2000. You're like early to mid high school. I know we touched base on this during our episode we did before, but like for the purpose of tracking the story here, how did you meet? Like how did your music experience start to overlap? And also like within this mix, like when and how did like punk and hardcore become a central part of the music mix? Not to limit you with that, but just to say.
Well, Tone, you answer this because it's kind of tied in a crazy way. The answer to both of those questions, it's the same answer.
Yeah, well, we met in rec camp, right? We met each other in 2nd grade rec camp, I want to say, because we went to different elementary schools in the same city. Our at that time, South Portland was pretty big, and there were like 7 elementary schools, 3 on one half and 4 on the other, and I was on one side and Anthony was on the other side, and we met at this summer camp because I went to the wrong-sided elementary school. whatever. This long story short, but we met there, and I remember bringing like Dookie, which is over my shoulder here.
Dookie. It's
to
Dookie.
Yeah, to listen to, because I think that was the third record I ever owned. It was Counting Crows, Offspring Smash, Green Day Dookie, and it was, let's bring music and let's bring our CD players, and Anthony and I were like, we're listening to music together, like this is fun, and that's where it started. When we were 10 years old. So
that's awesome.
That's where it started.
Okay. And being like, did you track together? Were you in the same town? Did you eventually, like, did those grade schools feed to the same middle school and high school? And so you guys were hanging throughout this whole time?
Different middle schools.
Oh, different middle schools. You're right.
Okay.
Yeah. And right now it's not that way, but back then there were 2 middle schools, and I was on the other side, and he was on you know, the other side sucked. I'm not going to lie. But
a lot of riffraff.
He's actually one of the only ones from that middle school I'm still friends with. So
okay.
But then we ended up at the same high school together. You know, we were on teams together, track team, stuff like that.
Okay.
Played basketball together, hung out together, went to shows together. You know, just it was a thing. You know, once we hit the high school.
Okay. Well, let's follow the first show, but let's go back to like an early show memory. Give me one that you can both riff on, like you went to a show together, or you remember seeing each other, having an exchange, and you can both look back and kind of reminisce over. Let's see where this goes.
Man, I would say there's a lot of them, and they're mostly state theater, probably rustic overtone shows or something at the Civic Center.
Yeah. Can I tell the story of your car getting towed? And I've done it before, but it's been a while.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah, that's a good pull.
What a respectful way to bring up what sounds like a painful story.
It wasn't that bad, but I remember telling it the first time, and it had to have been like, 180 episodes ago. And I thought that you were like, ooh, I wish you hadn't done that, because I wasn't sure if like your parents didn't know.
No, we had early release, yeah.
Yeah, so kind of. We had a study hall together junior year of high school, and rather than sit in the study hall, we would like get signed passes to go down to somewhere else, and we'd leave, and we'd end up going to our local record store, and little did we know, parking in this parking lot out back of this local record store in Portland, Maine, which isn't there anymore, sadly, but the chain still exists, but this one's not there anymore. But you park in this parking lot, and we were inside for what, 5 minutes, 8 minutes buying CDs, and we come out and his car's gone, and we're like,
Gonzo.
Like, we're supposed to be at school, and we have no car. Like, what do we do here? So we walk up. This guy from across the street, who's like the doorman at the building across the street, comes out. He goes, "Hey, saw you guys walk in. Yeah, your car got towed." And we're just like, oh shit, like we have to call Anthony's parents to let them know that his car is no longer here, and we're stuck in Portland, and we're supposed to be at school. So yeah.
And how did that conversation go?
We went to your house across the bridge. I remember.
Yeah, I was closer. Yeah.
I don't think anything came out of it. I think it was probably gift of gab.
We could have been doing worse things. I mean, let's be honest. We were going to buy CDs.
And as a parent, you're like, pick and choose your battles. It would seem like your parents by that point are probably just like proud of what you're choosing to get into, playing hooky.
Well, it's funny. If I think about that era of music memories, that's so if we didn't go to Bull Moose, the local record store, we would probably just exchange CDs. Like I had one of those huge CD binders, and it would come to me. It would come to study hall with me, or I remember we would make up fake band names.
We did.
And one of them, I know the one of them,
Contort.
Yeah, and it was probably like a play on. I don't even know if we knew Converge at the time, but like. It was like a perfect new metal band name.
The K was backwards like corn. Yeah, the whole night.
That's awesome. Well, to track with this line of questioning, you guys are huge music fans. You're growing up consuming records. You're going to shows. You're connecting with your friends over music. Do you play? Have you had bands? Talk to us about your music history and how that has played a role. I mean, obviously you're in the scene. There's a lot of Portland bands.
You want me to answer it?
Yeah, more you than me, because I think I tried to write for a little while, but it didn't go anywhere, and I didn't like any of it, and I didn't want to show it to anybody. So that was kind of the extent of my musical prowess.
And that's as a player of.
Oh, I didn't play anything. I think I would just write lyrics.
You just write a lyric. Okay.
Yeah.
If you had to, looking back now, I mean, what was your biggest influence when you were writing? Like who were you imagining yourself to be in a way? Like, what energy were you channeling?
This was probably like freshman year of college. I was listening to underground hip hop. I was listening to like A Perfect Circle.
Okay.
It wasn't very happy.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. It was a time where you're just like, I write this stuff down to get it out of me, and then I felt better.
Yeah, no, music is a place to put things, man.
Yep.
And it's powerful.
Yeah.
So I feel that. What about you, Anthony? Has this ever been something you teased out or aimed at?
So we had a buddy who was one of these like music savants who could pick up the piano and just play by ear, guitar, play by ear. He got a guitar it was early 2000s. I don't know what year, but he got a guitar, and that inspired me to get a bass guitar. And he would kind of push me to try to learn. And my problem is I couldn't count. Which is ironic because I played the saxophone and I was fine, but I just couldn't figure it out. So, but we would cover songs. Like we covered Blink, we covered the Ataris, we covered Avril Lavigne's I'm With You. And I would just play the bass changes. I wouldn't play anything else. I just play the, just the changes. And I could do that. You throw anything else at me, I couldn't do it.
Got it. Well, that's cool. I mean, I think I ask because I feel like at the time it felt like from my end, everybody I knew was at least trying to start a band, right? Like it was, I think that revelation you kind of got into when you were talking about that show at the State where, whoa, I'm in the room with these people. I'm inspired. Like, it's almost like, you can't help but want to put a pen to paper, in some way, shape or form. And at the same time, you're hearing all these things that, rallying around music that gets those things out of your body, out of your mind. That's really healthy in that way. So yeah, I appreciate you guys sharing.
Although I will say this, later on in college, this was 05, 06 timeframe, I did a open mic night with some buddies, with some actual musicians. And we covered Terror, we covered Poison the Well, we covered Every Time I Die, and Bury Your Dead. Yeah.
And what did you play?
Bass. Yeah.
Okay. Sick.
And I could hang with that.
Whoa.
Although we did it was Terror's Overcome, and I just played the changes. Like I didn't play the there's some noodling going on there.
You didn't do the fill. Just the root note. All right. I can dig. That's cool. What how did that go over? You had an open mic night playing Terror and Poison the Well.
It went over, two of our buddies moshing, maybe 30 people sitting down, and then it was in a kind of a community space in our college. I went to Stonehill, and the stage was kind of by the late night food area. So like you'd get drunk kids coming in getting food, and then we're being idiots playing breakdowns.
I was just imagining like well-worn couches in a coffee shop with like somebody who had just finished like playing some Annie DeFranco songs or something. And
then you guys go up there and rip Terror. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Actually, this came up in a recent episode. My bass cord came unplugged halfway through one of the songs, and I didn't even notice.
You should apologize to bassists right now too. I mean, let's be honest.
I shit on bassists. I said bassists are useless to.
I think you called them the right field. Yeah.
What episode was that?
It was Lockie from
the
Alpha.
Right fielder.
That's the right fielder.
Yeah, and we ended up apologizing to our buddy Seth, who actually is in the band that helped make our theme music. So, Seth, if you're listening, we apologize on the record.
I mean, at least you're a bass player, you get to have that opinion. You can say that.
Right.
All right, let's get back to albums. So, obviously, shows really powerful. We talked about first albums. We talked about like what role music played in your homes coming up, how you guys met, how memorable experiences getting into music, getting your car towed at a record store. Talk to me if you had to pick 2 or 3 seminal albums that like you would almost characterize as having changed your direction. And not so much like, I mean, it could be stylistically, but even more like that were mile markers on the path, so to speak. Like, what would those be and why? What came out of your time with those albums?
I'll lead off here. I've got
please.
I gave the first 3 I bought, and I mean those have all been records I've come back to. August and Everything After, still listen to it to this day. Dookie, I've listened to fairly recently, and we did a whole episode on Smash, Offspring Smash, like 5 or 6 episodes back. So yeah, those records are still loom kind of large for me because they're where I started and they're like my kind of home. I found some more stuff as I got into college that I became a huge Atmosphere fan and listened to God Loves Ugly a ton around that time that I was in college by myself, living at home. And like most of my friends had left. Anthony had left. Nate was gone. A lot of our friends were not around. So I was just like looking for music and looking for people to hang out with, and would go to, whatever show I could get to with friends, and maybe drive down to Boston to meet up with friends to see shows. But Atmosphere was big for me at that time. And then I loved Thrice. Thrice was huge for me in this moment and still are to this day. That band is continuing to change, always changes and always does something that I'm interested in. And Tool, I've always come back to Tool. Lateralis is huge for me. Enema is huge for me. 10,000 Days in the moment was really big. And you always find something different when you listen to them. I saw them this fall for the first time in like 10 years. I never thought I'd see them again, and was able to see them again and was blown away again and was happy that it happened. And it was just one of those kind of moments in the room that I'm like, oh, this is happening again. This is so cool. I did not think it would. So those are the bands that have kind of shaped me over the last almost
I love
40
that.
years.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah.
Because I'm also a huge Thrice fan. Like both Illusion of Safety and then Artist in the Ambulance specifically were like really like turning point albums for me. Yep. Illusion of Safety blew my mind and opened up not only lyrically, the melodies, the guitar work. I mean, all of it was huge for me. Which of their albums would you say is like the Pandora's box for you?
The one that got me there was Artist in the Ambulance, but I think I love Beggars the most at this point. I love the kind of bluesy aspect of Beggars.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. Huge fan. That resonates.
Same.
All right, Anthony, you're up.
This is tough because like if I think about what I listen to now, it's definitely on the heavier side, or it's like pop punk. Like it's somewhere in there with some mix. Rage's Evil Empire all day. And we talked about that. That was one that like really, I mean, I would have got, if I didn't get in them in 5th grade, I would have got into them because they got huge, obviously. But like with the Renegades album, you got like some hip hop covers. You got like Cypress Hill, and I knew Cypress Hill, but like you knew about Cypress Hill from them. You knew about Minor Threat. They covered In My Eyes. Like you didn't know, and I think like MC5 and EPMD, like
Bob Dylan.
Like you knew every one of those was influential, but like I didn't know much about them beyond that. And then like years later, you're like, oh shit, like they were the tip. Like if I was just listening a little closer, I could have been into all that earlier. So I would say them definitely influential. In the late 90s, huge nu metal fan, huge. And I still am. Like I love it. I mean, I would say Korn's Life is Peachy, probably. In middle school, 96. I remember hearing like Twist, which I don't know if you're into them, Todd, but like the first song in Life is Peachy is the song Twist, where Jonathan Davis just like scats and he's just like, it's just noises. So as like a 12-year-old, like I like heavy stuff, I think, but this is different and weird.
Yeah.
And then I would say on the punk side, maybe AFI.
Ooh,
like
that's a good
Black
one.
Sails in the Sunset, Art of Drowning. Tone, Dane C. He had an older brother that was big into punk, and like he used to wear AFI shirts, he wore 10-yard fight hoodies, he wore Moss Icon t-shirts, and Newfound Glory before, like I think even before self-titled freshman year. And he tipped me off to like Newfound Glory, another one, huge influence.
When their first record came out, I mean, that was
keep going with this stuff too. Like I have Smashing Pumpkins popped into my head, obviously the Rage stuff. Yeah.
And like I think all those were like stair steps to like, I don't know, today I listen to Hatebreed, I listen to Bleeding Through, I listen to Hot Water Music. We listen to Hot Water Music, Tone. Like it just I would say
Hot Water's Caution record is one of those for me.
Right on.
For sure. Like great absolute record. Turning point record. Yeah, it's interesting. I had that same, I mean, I was blown away with Korn's first album. So I missed, like, I had a period after where I wrote them off, and probably unnecessarily, but like
as a 15-year-old, you wrote them off.
Yeah, like you know, you bounce around between things and you're like, oh, there can't be space for all this stuff, which is, you know, complete, you know, bullshit. That's not how things work. But that first record, I mean, that was unlike anything I had heard in heavy music. And it's really easy to look back and to say, oh yeah, you know, you say, oh, like Korn, you know, and it's like any genre defining stuff where you're sort of, you know, you call Kleenex, it's not like tissue, right? Like you're sort of like, they created a thing, right? And I mean, it's crazy to look back to. I remember hearing that, you know, that the first single, and just being like absolutely blown away. Like there was nothing I could reference that was anything like that. And I was already like hearing lots of fast, like, you know, aggressive hardcore bands and, you know, old punk, but this was on a whole other planet, you know? So it definitely resonates.
It was definitely on a whole other planet. Yeah, absolutely. No, I completely agree with you. And it was a band that I never really gave the time of day back then. And now I respect that of what they did and the influence that they had on a lot of other bands. And I'm eating crow, you know, 20 years out, but it is what it is. 30 years out almost.
Right on. Okay. Well, it's cool. I love, and I kind of anticipated that the answers would go that way, where I'm like, yeah, 2 records that were turning points, and you each listed like at least a half a dozen artists, and like at least 3 or 4 records.
Physical Graffiti by Led Zeppelin. I can go there. I can go Melancholy. I can keep going. I love that. So much fun. I love it. All of it.
Music is that way. So let's take a harder spin. I mean, it's not been all easy. I mean, it's clear. You know, I actually have a, you know, I work in coffee, in specialty coffee, and that's like my full-time occupation. And I actually have a podcast in specialty coffee that I do. And I know from being a part of a monthly podcast, let alone a weekly podcast, that it is a ton of work. And I'm sure it has not always been easy. And I guess I wanted to kind of shine a light on that, not to be a downer or to put you guys in the dumps on stuff, but I'm sure you've had seasons where you were like scratching your head, like, can I keep doing this?
For sure. Yeah.
Is this going to get better? Like, you know, what are we trying to do? I guess my question for you guys is, you know, what have some of those moments been like? What is, if you had a hardest thing about making the podcast, not so much in an ongoing way, but if there was like a moment in time where you guys almost let it go and you decided not to, or if there was, you know, just a kind of a wall you ran into and had to just figure out a way through, I think everyone would love to hear it.
I have the wall, and I love Nate. We have a third host, and he's one of our best friends, and he'll hear this, so I'm not gonna. He just couldn't do it weekly to the level that we continued to do it, and he did it for what, 3 years, a little over 3 years to that level. So the fact that Nate, I love you, bro. The fact that we got you for 3+ years on a weekly schedule to do this podcast, and now we still have you come back when you can and when we can pull it off. I'm so thankful for that. But we last summer of 23, he couldn't do it, and we kind of were at a crossroads. Like, do Anthony and I keep it going? Do we keep reaching out to people? The nice thing is we were almost 3.5 years in, and we had built some stuff to get people to pitch things to us, and there were ways to continue to do it with, you know, interviews, and it wasn't just Anthony and I trying to talk music, just he and I. So again, this is not a slander on Nate. He just couldn't pull it off to the level that we were continuing to do it, and he's still part of the family. Obviously, his name is on the. I think if you look at our description, it's 3 lifelong friends. That's still there, and that's on purpose.
Yeah. No, I mean, even when things change, that doesn't, you know, even by necessity, that doesn't have to be a bad thing. You know, I love how you hold that, you know, where it's the door's open, and, you know, that is, history's not written over the same way as, you know, you aren't limited to what you can do, you know, as life grows and changes. Anthony, are you in the same boat? Is that like the definitive moment where you sort of found yourself in a spot of, hey, is this over? Do we do something different? Does this have to change fundamentally?
I mean, that could be. I think there's definitely like phases where you're like questioning, is this the best use of my time? And Tony and I, and actually it's a question my wife has asked me over the life of the pod, and it's a question that Tony and I ask each other is, does this still fill our bucket? We only have so much free time. Like we only, and we always say it's the allure of this podcast. It's getting those questions answered that we've had for years. It's the unknown interview around the corner. It's the With Honors and the As Friends Russ and the Crime Mysterios coming back from the dead, and like, oh, they want to chat? Sweet. Because I've been wanting to chat with them for years. You know, it's that stuff that kind of keeps you going. I will say, when we had, I don't know if you like the Distillers, Todd, the punk band.
I don't know them very well, no.
We had the bassist on, Ryan Sin. He was in Angels and Airwaves for a little bit back in the day, but I remember he said something that resonated with me, which was, there's going to be nights on stage and there's going to be gigs where you're going to remember why, you're going to have to remember why you started doing this in the first place. You're going to be, and Todd, you can probably relate, there's probably With Honor gigs where no one's there and you're dialed back to why you started doing it in the first place, because you love it, you know? And that's the thing is, there's episodes where 1,000 people plus tune in. There's episodes where just, you know, hundreds tune in, or, you know, not fewer than 100, but low hundreds. And you're like, does anyone care? And then it comes back to, well, we still do. We still like doing it, you know?
Yeah. No, that hits hard. I mean, I feel like, you know, you're constantly negotiating the internal and the external motivation, right? And to your point about like time and energy and resources being, you know, limited, where you can't avoid the question of, hey, it's not, you know, just, is this a good use of time? It's like, can I give up the other things that I might otherwise do? And
all day long.
But a lot of times I feel like, especially as the years go on, I mean, you have, you know, as we have as much to look back on as we do to look forward to, eerily, right around this 40-year mark, you're sort of in a spot where you have to look at it in a more internal way, because you realize like all that other stuff is going to come up, it's going to go down, it's going to come up, it's going to go down. And yeah, I love that you can kind of make your own horizon line to ground yourself that way. That's cool.
Can I jump in on that real quick?
Yeah, please.
If we had started this, a bunch of things would not have gone well had we started this at 26 and not 35 or 6. And the being mature piece is huge. The knowing that you're going to have ups and downs is huge. And being and having the lived experience. So the fact that we are able to go back to, okay, we love talking about this, we love doing this. It started as just me, Anthony, and Nate talking about the music that we loved. We never thought we'd be able to talk to people about their music and what we love about it, and then we get to start doing that. So the perspective of it is like, okay, we still get to do that, and this is the fun part. And Anthony said that to me the other night, like, this is the fun part. We're doing the fun part right now. Yeah, all the other stuff to get it out there for people to hear it, we do it. It's fun. It's cool, and it's so that we can continue to do this. And that's what I keep coming back to.
I love that. I had this moment. I was reflecting a lot the last couple of days, like coming into this, because, you know, I feel like a pretty rich person being invited into what feels like a very inner circle. And, you know, for you guys to take a moment and to just talk about yourselves is unusual in the historical context, right? So it feels really sacred and special for me to be a part of that. And it would seem like this far in, if you're still doing this with the type of commitment you've had, it's got to be a part of that process, kind of like how we breathe, you know, the things that kind of, you know, to your saying, Anthony, that fill the bucket, you know, the things that kind of like recharge you, you know, that you're giving just as much as you're getting. And that's kind of the relationship to it. Right. And I think it's one of the things that makes you guys as a pair, you know, the energy that you create so attractive. Right. Because, you're kind of you create this whole churn with it together that way. So yeah, looking across your history, I gotta ask, favorite episode. You can pick one, and you cannot answer. There's so many.
I can't give you
answer
seven.
this one. This one. 213.
This one's pretty good. Yeah, this one's pretty good. Yeah.
I'll answer first.
Okay.
Let's. I can restate the question to be more generous. A favorite episode.
Okay. All right. Because they're like our kids.
Actually,
As we say to people, you like that song? Give us your favorite song. Well, you can't pick one. You like them all. You made them.
Yeah.
You know what? Let's have fun with this. Tony, guess what I'm going to say.
Ooh, I like this.
Is it Brian the first time, or Brian with Vinny?
No, but that's up there.
Okay. It's neither of those.
We had Brian McTurnan and Vinny Caruana on
Oh, that's cool.
to discuss the Movie Life 40-Hour Train album together. And that was like, Tony and I didn't even say anything the whole episode.
No, it was amazing. It's like,
we
hey,
let them
cook. Nobody wants to hear us.
They were
They wanna hear
working
them.
through stuff.
That's awesome.
The one I was thinking of was, and it was a two-parter. It was Alex Dunn of Crime and Stereo.
Oh yeah, I knew that. It's too recent, so it hasn't made it into my.
So actually, Todd, I'll say this: we didn't reach out to With Honor for the first 3 years of the pod because we didn't know where you guys were at. You know what I mean? Like when the bands don't release albums for decades, it's like,
Sure.
do they hate each other? Like, what's going on there? So it's like, do I want to even interject my idiot podcast into that? No. So I never reached out to you guys. I never reached out to Crime and Stereo. And there's
Even
a few
though I
others.
told him, I was like, we need to.
Sure.
This needs to happen.
Yeah.
Sure. I dig.
So yeah, it was the Alex Dunn of Crime and Stereo, which was recently, right? That was in the last few months, and we chatted for 3 hours, and I think work the next day got in the way. We would have chatted for 4 hours. You know, it was a two-parter. It was great.
Nice. That's awesome.
I said this to you that night. I think it was really cool to be part of something that I know meant that much to you, because it meant a lot to me. It was an amazing conversation. Not a lot of those conversations exist around that band. And the fact that you, knowing that the level of fan you are of that band, were able to be a part of it, and I get to sit there and be part of it and ask questions and interject my dumb thoughts that I'm into the band, but I'm not into the band to the level that you are. That was cool, and I'm still pretty happy that happened for both of us, but for you mainly.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, was it that as a central sort of tenet of the episode, Anthony? Was it like just the history you have and the insight you take into the band, and then how it was flowing, and
all day, you know that. And I'll say this: I don't know if there's anyone with a podcast that knows that much about them. So it was like and honestly, maybe the same with the With Honor episode with you. Like I would.
That's nice of you to say, but absolutely unnecessary.
I would put my money on it. And anyone that has a podcast, I know the most about, and it's not a lot of people, but I probably know the most about With Honor if anyone has a podcast. Most about Crime and Stereo with anyone that has a podcast, and As Friends Rust. I'll put them in there too.
Yeah,
awesome.
and we got Damien, we had you obviously, and we had Alex. So with the fact that I was able to love those bands myself through you to begin with, and then be able to talk to you guys all and have these kind of amazing conversations that still resonate. Some of them were, the first one was 2 years ago, or 3 years ago with Damien, and then to have you last fall and Alex earlier this year, and just amazing stuff.
That's killer. Awesome. All right, Tony, that doesn't get you off the hook.
Ah, damn it.
Favorite episode.
Can I? We did Tattoo the Earth the summer of 22, and getting to go to that day festival at the Palladium and be kind of part of the event where we were pulling people in and talking to them in the balcony of the Palladium, and knowing that we could record live, it would sound good. I think we had 8 guests that day, and it was just amazing. Like the fact that when we started this thing, if you had told me we were going to do that day, I would not have believed anything that you were saying to me.
In the lead up, we chronicled. Are you familiar with Tattoo the Earth, Todd?
A little bit.
Yeah. It was a festival back in 2000 with like Slipknot, Hatebreed, Sepultura.
Head PE, Seven Dust, the whole night.
Yeah. It resurrected 20 years later, and we covered it. Like we were part of the promo engine leading up to it and all that. So we interviewed Sepultura, Seven Dust, you name it, leading up to the fest, and then day of we
and then did all the coverage
on site.
day of.
It was actually that's tough to top.
How did that even happen for you guys? I mean, catch up. I mean, what was the setup there? Like, how did you make that happen? Not logistically, but I mean, like to be pulled in that way for the reprise of such a big festival. I mean, that's huge.
So Nate, our third host, was in tune with that. He wanted to go to that when we were in high school. I think we were 15 or 16 when it happened, and it was just hard to get down to Boston, and all that stuff was, not necessarily on the table. And we saw that Scott Alderman was putting out. He saw that Scott Alderman was putting out a book. He was the creator of the festival, and we interviewed him about the book. And then he shot us an email, I don't know, a couple weeks later, and was like, hey, it's being resurrected. Do you guys want to be like the podcast of it? And you can do 4, 5, 6 episodes leading up to it and talk to different people, that were on the first one, that are on the new one, and then come day of and do some of that there. And we were all like, holy shit. Yes, we do want to do that.
Yeah, but that's massive.
And it was probably the most work we did. It was the summer of 22, and it was probably the most we were busy because we were scheduling interviews. We were putting people in the same episode. It was just this kind of massive undertaking that if I had part of it to do over, probably a couple things we do differently, but not much. I think we kind of nailed it on our front for never having done it before. But the day that we were there and got to meet all these people and like run into Brian Fair of Shadows Fall and him know who I was, and I was like, holy shit, like that's cool. Like
that's awesome.
Never in a million years would have thought that was possible.
So I see how you answered my question both accurately, but also with a more than one episode type of answer. Well done. Well done.
Hey, we're media trained, Todd.
I see. Yeah, it's like a bit political, if you will. Like, oh, let me tell you the question I wanted you to answer.
Yeah.
Or I wanted you to ask. Okay, cool. Well, yeah, it's interesting. That kind of brings me to a question I wanted to ask, and I don't know your goals for time here, but I'm getting to the end of my list, so I don't want to. If
we'll let you land it.
Okay, I can land the plane here shortly. But one thing, and I'm just thinking of timeline. I mean, at that same time, like With Honor was setting up to do the original reprise of Furnace Fest, right around the time that Tattoo the Earth was coming back. And I imagine you were doing this media run in the summer of 22, looking over the history of your podcast. I mean, a huge portion has been affected by and amidst the COVID pandemic. I mean, how would you, in looking back from where we sit now, I mean, what role does that have to play? Was that like a catalyst because you found yourself with a lot of time, energy, life had changed, culture had changed, and all of a sudden you could put a lot of energy into the pod like early on in its life cycle? Was it a negative thing? I mean, how would you look back on that, and what role did it play in Podioslave's history?
Huge catalyst. I don't know if the podcast would still be a podcast if it didn't happen. So we had planned to do this in early 2020, and I think we recorded the week everything shut down. Like we did. Yep. We did. Yeah. So the thing we benefited from was everyone was available. In fact, like the first interview we landed was Mark Weinstein of Amoeba Records out on the West Coast, the biggest independent record store in the world.
Yeah.
They were doing kind of a press run for like a GoFundMe, and our third host Nate hit them up and was like, "Hey, I think he positioned it as like, we get this booming podcast.
Yeah.
Come chat with us."
Nate's a fake it till you make it guy all day with stuff like that. Yeah.
And so he said yes, and then after that, we reached out to Scott Russo of Unwritten Law, legacy SoCal punk band, and he said yes, he was available, and then members of Zebrahead, and it just, the list goes on, and then you built the resume, and then it kind of takes on a mind of its own. But massive. And we say like COVID numbers, like in a booming housing market, it's like, yeah, those are booming, that's a boom market. Well, COVID was boom market for a lot of pods. Like
sure
that was it has absolutely helped us. And people are hard, like now some people that we would just Instagram DM, now you get to go through management. Now you get to go through PR firms where they were just sitting idle.
Yeah.
And were available.
Yeah, no, I imagine, I mean, especially for full-time touring artists, right?
Yeah.
Whose calendar is just a lot more jammed, just logistically speaking. I mean, that was a way to stay connected to fan base in a time where, there wasn't a whole lot of other way, Anything to add on that, Tony?
Yeah, and then we started getting better at like pitching it. So, we realized, okay, things still haven't really opened up. So and so is a pretty active person on their social media, whether it be Instagram, Twitter, whatever. Let's toss out, hey, you be bored and you want to talk to us for 45 minutes? We'll talk about your legacy. We'll talk about, what you hope to do when things kind of open back up. Because at some point, hopefully, we'll get back to that. And so, we get Peanut from 311, we get Frank Turner, we get people of that ilk that we never would have posited asking, 15 episodes in, but 60 episodes in, we're a little more comfortable. We're a little more aware of what we can do. And people started saying yes to that. And yeah, the pandemic absolutely, as bad as it was for so many people, helped the podcast for sure.
Yeah, killer. I'd be remiss if I didn't give you a little window here to pose a question that you hoped I would ask before we wrap things up momentarily. Is there anything that in reviewing these 4 years, in celebrating what is hopefully, another anniversary on what becomes a huge pile over time, something that you want your listenership to know, or, something that you guys are holding near and dear that should be put out there?
That's tough.
I'm going to ask a question to Tony.
Okay.
I'm going to go superlative with this. Most bizarre podcast moment.
Bizarre?
And you don't have to say names.
I mean, we haven't recently, but I'm not even sure if we're gonna put that one out. So
Right.
We've had a couple where we had to eat them, and that was obviously not great. And you spend all that time and energy either prepping or listening to music or getting questions together. That's always tough. I guess if you're a fan of this medium, and it doesn't even need to be us, it could be somebody else. If you're listening today because Todd's on, thank you. And if you listened the first time because Todd was on, thank you. And you haven't come back, that's fine. But you probably jump around to podcasts. Those people put in a ton of work to make this happen. So I guess that's the how much work behind the scenes. You kind of asked it, but that's the big thing. Like, to put out the best product, you have to work your ass off. And we're not making a dime on this thing. And it's not because we want to make money. It's because we enjoy doing it. And so just remember that when you're criticizing somebody online, I guess.
So easy to do.
Because there've been some bizarre comments. Yeah, absolutely.
When we were called woke Ken dolls, that one was pretty cool.
Oh, that's right.
I enjoyed that. I still think that's funny.
We were called
what
woke.
was this?
Yeah, a YouTube commenter called us both woke Ken doll. I feel like I just listened to 2 woke Ken dolls, and I was like, I don't even know what that means. I am not losing sleep over this.
Wow,
that was a good bizarre moment.
Hey, that's memorable. I mean, what about a bizarre, I mean, I know you could easily edit out, anything that comes up, but you must have had some pretty what I like to call woments, woe moments.
Yeah.
I like moments, by the way. I'm stealing that.
So early on, and I would say maybe the first year, so the first 50 episodes, we had, and we're not going to have names or bands. We're not going to include that, but we had someone that we had to reschedule like 4 times, and the reason for the rescheduling was very bizarre.
Every time. It
was always very, very bizarre. And this is someone that was like, at least my perspective, and you really never know. You know, just because you know someone from a band, you know nothing about them. It was bizarre reasons that I almost think they were trolling us. I don't know. One of them was like they had a food delivery, and like it was a special day. It was a special food, and I'm not going to say the food, and I'm not going to say the region of where the food comes from because you might whatever
put it together.
You can figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like this is
kind of like Baltimore
that...
crab, but not really Baltimore crab. Something else.
Yeah, like my mom sent me a blank delivery, and I'm going to eat it tonight, and it's like, well,
you could do that too.
Does that mean you're not coming on? What?
Yeah, like this is the 3rd time you've blown us off at the last minute. So yeah.
Yeah, so I would say that was the most bizarre. And like to think back, it's like, well, we still wanted to do it after that. Like we still kept on the pod. We really must have loved it,
So you ended up getting that episode?
No, never got it.
Never happened. Never.
Oh, okay. You just stayed with it until they dropped the excuses.
Yeah.
Well, we just stopped. We stopped after the 4th.
Okay.
We're like, all right, we're done here. And that's happened a couple different times. I mean, we're always coming up with ideas, putting stuff out there, hitting up somebody on wherever platform we can get them, looking for their management, hitting them up. That's been a thing since May of 2020. Like we've always been on that tip, and we've just had some interesting and weird, and we've had some commits and then they disappear, or we've scheduled episodes and we're sitting here in the room and they just don't show, and it's like, ugh.
Sure.
But there's enough out there, and there's a lot of great people, so we just keep plugging away.
Yeah, man.
Actually, let me chime in one more. Early on, like this would have been one of the first interviews that we would have had. Nate, our third host, reached out to someone who was a former member of a now massive band. He's no longer in the band. He was an original member, founding member, and he said yes. Nate, I don't know, got his number or something. So the guy left a voicemail for our host, and he was gung-ho to come on. And then it turned out that he couldn't talk anything about the band that got him big because of a NDA or something. And it's like, well, what are we going to talk about?
Yeah.
Oh, yikes.
And then we're like, Nate, just lose the...
Free.
Yeah, we're good. We got busy that week. Sorry, man. Like,
it's like, Nate, lose the number. Wait, how did you get the number? All right, I'm not asking questions.
Yeah, that was Nate, a Nate. That's
just tell him my mom is sending me some Baltimore crab.
Yeah, exactly. We've got Baltimore crab coming. Sorry, man.
Right on. Oh man, I imagine there's been a lot of ups and downs. It's very cool. Well, hey, last and certainly not least, I know you guys do all of this, for your own, building up your own enjoyment, for the love of the music. I go back to, that way we started, 5 words or less. It was a beautiful answer. I think it's pure. But, are there ways, like, what are the biggest ways for people who love what you do, who are like eating up, what you're putting together? What are the ways that you feel most supported, the ways that they can be a part of what you're doing, build you up, either demonstrate support in a way or quite literally support the pod? What are those ways? Is there anything forthcoming that isn't already there for ways people can get around you guys and be about Podioslave?
Oof. Share it. Tell people.
Word of mouth, baby. Yeah,
if you like what you hear, if you like the bands that we've talked to, and we've talked to the wide range of people. You may not like all of it, but that's okay. Like there are not a lot of podcasts that are doing that. So if you like 5 of the 215 episodes, tell a friend about those 5. Like, that's cool. I'm fine with that.
Killer. And at the least, if you're gonna shit talk some original type content, right?
Roll Kendalls all day, baby.
And that's the thing, is like Tony and I are not foreign to the reality that we have a wide palette. Like, Todd, we're the only podcast out there that has interviewed Anthrax, that's interviewed Godsmack, that's interviewed Crime in Stereo, Sepultura, Quicksand,
Spose, Trawl.
Bar.
I mean, throw them all out there. Yeah,
just we're the only ones, and so like that's not lost on me. Like I understand that it's the opposite of niche. I understand that, but there's something there for everyone, and we're like the Cheesecake Factory, right? Huge menu.
Yeah.
You'll find something you like. Just dig in.
Yeah, but isn't it a bit to a degree existential? I mean, it is sort of niche in that other people are not doing like music as a whole. Like other people are not open to their, and I think it comes from a fear place, right? Like where people don't want to fall outside of a scene. It's easier to be narrow and super, click kind of based
totally,
than to love what you love and let it take you wherever it takes you. You know what I mean? So I think
very
that's
true.
Cool.
Yeah. The people that have been the most accessible have been people like you, have been people in the world where that maybe, as someone who is kind of newer to the scene of some of the bands that we've talked to, it's not as scary as you think it is. These people are great. There are fun, awesome conversations in there. There's when you figure out what the music is about, you like it a lot more. Like just click on a couple episodes and dive into the person first, and then you can figure out if you like the music or not. Sometimes you find a favorite band that way.
Yeah, that's killer. I love that. Very cool.
Share, like, rate. It's all like the typical content creator stuff, but like that is the currency. I mean, you like we don't have a Patreon, but like through our host, like you can like technically subscribe. That doesn't, if you do that, we're so thankful, but that's not what it's about. It's just about being able to do this and connecting with people. The last thing I'll say, Todd, we are the only podcast in the world that's had members of Bleeding Through, Blood Has Been Shed, and Buck Cherry on the same podcast.
Wait, on the same episode?
No, just the same pod.
I was like, that's crazy. No, it's awesome, man. That's awesome.
And I don't know if that's it's definitely a good thing. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you like what you like, and that's the end of it.
Yeah, no, let it be your guide. I love that we got to do this, Tony, Anthony, and to Nate, who is not here with us. I would have loved you to be here too. I feel personally just really grateful for the opportunity. I think what you guys are bringing to music, what you did for like my little bit in your podcast world, it means a lot to me. It's really cool to be someone who can shine a light back on you guys in the context of hundreds of hours of this content that you've given to all of us, and ways that you've served this, I say scene, but it's not just one, like you said. I mean, it's all over the place. I just think that's so cool. And yeah, I hope for everyone who's stuck around and listened to the whole thing that, whatever you have in your glass, you're raising it high to Tony and Anthony here. Podioslave, long live. Here's to year 5 and beyond.
Let's do it, baby. Yeah.
All the love I have to you guys. Appreciate the time.
Well, we really appreciate you doing this. I mean, when it was brought up originally, we were like, that sounds amazing. I hope that can happen, because
exactly. Yeah, it's one of those really like cool. I hope that happens,
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the I'm glad we were able to do it. I'm sorry for the I know we were firing back and forth and I let it hang there, and then I was like, oh man, good. I hope I didn't send a message.
No, this is great. And honestly, go follow With Honor. You guys are playing New England Metal and Hardcore Fest in September, right? I mean, there's some stuff coming down the pike for you guys, so
yeah, we got a few more announcements coming for the summer as well. So lots of fun in that world. So I hope you guys will be down there too. I hope we'll get to hang around.
We were close to going last year, and I think we got to try to make that happen for sure.
Maybe a podcast opportunity.
Oh, there it is.
Well, Todd, I remember seeing you guys in 2004 at the Metal Hardcore Fest. Maybe this is a 20-year.
Ooh, wow.
Like that's the pitch to my wife. It's like, I first saw them 20 years ago there.
Hey, I mean,
this is the time. This is
going to be pretty special. It's going to be pretty special. No, we'll have fun.
Like, who?
No, have her listen to this, and she'll get to know us a little better.
There you go. Awesome, man. Well, thank you guys. I look forward to seeing it come together.
Awesome. Thanks, Todd.
Thank you for listening to Podioslave. We are at Podioslave on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all of the places that you can find us on social media. Facebook, Podioslave Podcast. YouTube, Podioslave Podcast there. Email us at podioslavepodcast@gmail.com. And hey, if you want to become a supporter, click on the link at the bottom of the episode and give us $1, give us $5. It keeps the lights on, keeps us going. We really appreciate that stuff. Thank you.